Chapter 8. Bon Voyage. Indeed it was. The 10 days which followed may not have shaken the world, but they gave Q building a jolt. Eric, Gordon, and I were all awaiting the same thing, overseas shipment orders. We had nothing to do officially, just check with headquarters twice a day to see if the first alert notice had arrived. Packing for what lay ahead was a ritual which brought us to the edge of complete lunacy. No one was going to the same place, no one was taking the same things. Eric and I had 3 sets of gear: personal, government issue, military, and OSS issue. The last being different since he was going to the North African theater of operations and I was headed for the European. Gordon, ticketed for the Middle East, had personal, government issue civilian, and OSS. In spite of Moose's frantic pleadings and enraged screams, 3 hopelessly intermixed piles began to rise in his office, which was near the supply room. The sergeant in charge of equipping us developed a nervous tic and the habit of talking to himself. Several other people closely connected with the job of getting us out of the States went with him, one better, and started talking about requesting transfers to another branch. There was the happy days when we took over the stencil machine and cut our own baggage labels, having been issued a sizable quantity of equipment for which we could foresee no earthly use. Each of us knocked out a stencil with a fictitious shipment number under our name. These we stuck on our extra lockers, which were then carefully packed with such collector's items as 1 whistle thunderer, 10 pins, tent, shelter half, 2 poles, tent, shelter half, 1 case, water repellent, food bag, chemical warfare accessories and equipment including clothing, 1 manual, what to do if the ship sinks, 1 manual, how to get along with the French, 1 manual, how to get along with the British. We put the lockers out where the baggage detail would find them. I never saw mine again. Eric followed him like an unrequited love and finally was delivered to his headquarters in Karachi, India, some 18 months later. He said the manual about the British came in very handy. The morning after the stencils dawned with the telephone ringing as though its little alloy heart was about to burst. I pried open one eye and discovered that 5 people were sharing the double room Eric and I called home. Gordon, I knew he'd be there, and 4 young ladies. The extra one must have been the chaperone. The caller was an OSS doctor, reminding me today was the day we'd sworn to come and have our overseas physicals. The medics earned their money that morning. They had to certify we would last for 2 more weeks. If we fell dead on the way over, it was their fault. Before things were finished, they would have welcomed the blame. They asked Gordon to read the eye chart, and he asked them to turn on the lights. They asked Eric to read the color blindness test plates, and he promptly identified everything as plaid. They asked me to hop 10 times on 1 foot, then hastily asked me to stop after I toppled over twice in the first 3 hops, taking some costly medical equipment with me the second time. Our combined blood pressure scarcely totaled up to a normal one. The doc who checked our heartbeats and pulses had a hard time finding either. The one who listened to our lungs winced, put aside his stethoscope, tried us again bare-eared, and announced that the sounds reminded him so much of Canadian honking geese that he was homesick for his native Maine. Someone who should have known better sat us down in 3 chairs side by side, told us to cross our legs, and gave us a reflex test. He hit Gordon on the knee, missed the mark, and Eric kicked. He hit Eric on the knee, missed again, and shut his eyes to keep from seeing Gordon kick. When he whacked me, he was finally on target, so we all kicked. I demanded an extensive visual chart test, claiming I had bad vision only to be squashed by a corporal's, "Your eyes are all right, sir. We counted them. You have 2. The annual perception, the oral perception test was licked before it came near us. Eric said he'd have no part of it unless the bees were removed from the room. Gordon politely requested a postponement until the riveting stopped. I took the examination to get another crack at the corporal. He asked me to repeat what he said. 1, 2, button my shoe. He gave me a hard look and went on. Protestant, Episcopalian. What did you say? What did you say? Are you trying to be clever? Are you trying to be clever? 3-4, shut the door. What's your name? What's your name, sir? Well, what is your name, sir? Call me Candy Bar. I'm half nuts. No wonder they're shipping you over. I'll send for you when it's safe. Please be serious. Please be serious. White House. They got McKinley. You seem to be able to hear very well. I beg your pardon? I said you seem to be able to hear very well. Beg your pardon? You can hear perfectly. By this time he was shrieking. Eric walked in and asked me, what's the matter? That guy deaf? Then a complicated printed form. A major told us to fill it, and we spent the rest of the morning filling things. The result of all this, a foregone conclusion, was that we were found physically fit for service outside the continental limits of the U.S. They underlined the word physically. After all this, we trooped over to Q Building. On the checklist, things to do before going overseas, some disciple of Charles Adams had seen to it the final slot would be filled with Make Your Will. The headquarters generously provided a mimeograph form with blank spaces strategically placed thereon. The corpse to be filled them in, had it notarized, and was then free to croak with a clear conscience, safe in the knowledge that his family would be stuck with all his debts. We ran into a snag when Gordon tried to leave half his non-existent estate to the man who shoots, Fulton Lewis Jr., and the notary refused to notarize. Moose came in during the proceedings. He was thought of as our keeper. They may have sent for him, and became highly indignant because no one was leaving anything to him. His ruffled feelings were soothed by the sight and sound of Gordon trying to square himself by drawing up another will in which he left half his estate to the notary. There was a method in his madness, the notary being a thoroughly attractive young lady who proudly owned a fine, firm bosom. She also owned and was wearing a black dress cut so low Eric admiringly described it as an unbiblical spectacle. Every time she bent over to lean on a notary seal stamp, those who cared to look could see clear down to her knees. I lost track of how many times we revised our wills. When that wore thin, some clever lad came along with the idea we should all make out power of attorney forms. They too had to be notarized. When Miss Borden's notarized, we witnessed. Later in the week, Eric's orders arrived. He took it courageously, with his only objections being to the sentence which read, "This is a permanent change of station." Everyone within earshot was assured he was planning to return. Carrying his shield or on it, he would be back. The next day, his sailing orders were canceled. The delay was temporary, but it occasioned considerably, celebrating and even more considerable damage to my sickly bank balance. I was rapidly reaching the point where of necessity I had to go one or two places over the bounding main or into bankruptcy. When it finally came to pass, the Norse god's departure was satisfyingly dramatic. Wow. As was sometimes the case in the initial phase of an OSS troop movement, it was about as secret as yesterday's ball game and almost as well attended. Eric was the last to board the train. After a brief but heart-rending farewell, he swung up onto the car platform. As it started to move, waved gallantly, then stalked gratingly to the door with some thoughtless porter had just closed. When last seen, Eric the Great was bleeding freely from the nose. Gordon felt the kiss of death next. He went fast and followed what had become the accepted pattern. After the party, we sat up all night trying to inveigle the Statler Hotel laundry into returning clean the small mountain of work Gordon had thrown their way at the last minute. He'd left most of his personal packing until the final 2 hours between 6 and 8 in the morning, hoping against hope he'd get all his clothing back. It came up bit by bit, and we packed it as it arrived. Our actions were hampered by those of my date, a fine girl but low on stamina, stamina who would crawl in among Gordon's shirts and shorts for a quick nap if we left her alone near the luggage for a moment. Gordon's lady fair was no help either. If we went so much as 3 feet away, she'd wail, "Darling, come back, it's our last night," to which Darling would answer, "Be reasonable. I don't plan to be listed as one of the 10 best-dressed men in the resistance movement, but I would like to take enough to keep warm and dry. Pack in the morning. I adore you. I adore you, but hark the glow that through yonder window breaks, it's morning." By Ole Speaks. "Don't leave me, Gordon." She was in tears. One small failing marred this touching scene. 3 times running she'd called him different names. Gordon tried lamely to pass us off by telling me they were various characters he'd played on the stage, but I could see it jarred him when she'd bawl out the wrong handle. If the pathos of the occasion was wasted on me, the humor wasn't. When Gordon wasn't packing, he was either consoling his about-to-be bereaved love or picking up the phone and informing anyone who would listen that if his laundry wasn't in his room in 15 minutes, he'd come down and run the entire staff through their own mangle. Then he'd glare at me. "Stop laughing and do something. You know the rules. No tiki, no londi. You go Chinese on me, that's all it needs." We did get to headquarters on time, minus half Gordon's clothes and 9/10 of his natural good humor. The last tenth was sorely tried while the transportation officers rushed around frantically searching for another civilian member of the shipment. After a half an hour of waiting, I asked Gordon, "What's the difficulty?" "They can't locate that idiot Lawrence." "Why don't they go off and leave him? They seem to think he's going to be the most terrific agent in the history of civilized warfare. Get him into action and victory is ours. There's just one catch." "What?" "He don't want to go." It took another 30 minutes to track down Lawrence, the lost, and drag him forth. By the time the motor convoy started for the station, Gordon was in rugged shape. He stood upright in the back of the truck as it bounced away, bemoaning the lack of bands, cheering throngs, and flag-waving friends. His last words were, "What a way to go! What a miserable way to go!" My own days were numbered. I requested and got a weekend leave, which I spent in Annapolis. The family didn't like the idea of my going forth to battle, but they did have faith in my ability to take care of myself, so they devoted themselves to making my last days pleasant. The only difficulty came in explaining what my duty overseas was confidential in nature, and I'd tell everyone all about it the minute I came back to receive my medals. One of my father's indestructible female friends panicked a cocktail party by collaring me and gushing, "Oh, Roger, I hear you're in the Office of Strategic Services. I think it's simply wonderful for you to go overseas and entertain the boys." I said I could hardly wait to jump with a reel of film under each arm and a portable screen between my legs. Leave was cut short by a telegram from Moose. It came collect and advised me to hurry back. My father and sister bade me a pair of restrained farewells, after which I eased myself back to Washington and walked into the office, asking which way to the boat. Considering the length of time I'd had nothing to do but get ready, there seemed to be a disproportionate number of things yet to be done. My shipment was OSS through and through, 10 officers, 4 non-commissioned officers, 6 male civilians and 4 female civilians. 3 of the officers and 2 of the non-coms were authorized to wear civilian clothes. They were special bodies. The rest of us went as plain old bodies, and right gladly, too. As embarkation hour drew nigh, people began to appreciate more and more the difference between playing agent over here and being one over there. Going behind the lines was going to be quite enough, and I'd be happy to wear my uniform, thank you. It went smoothly. Moose was a tower of strength whenever I faltered. I kept my goodbyes at a minimum in order to maintain my credit rating, put my various affairs in order, and achieve the penultimate by getting my baggage off on schedule. The crowning glory came when I found our port of embarkation was to be Fort Hamilton, which meant the last nights would be in New York. On the fateful morn, I left the Statler, called Moose, and bequeathed him everything I had been forced to leave behind, including the bill, tried without success to think of a clever getaway line, and made it to headquarters almost on time. A colonel called the roll. We piled into trucks Someone yelled, "Let's go," as though there were a choice, and we rolled toward the station. I was glad no one came to see me off. At Fort Hamilton, I was amazed to find the Transportation Corps handling things with a smoothness I never dreamed that branch of the service could attain. We were processed, billeted, lectured, and turned loose until reveille. The trip to New York, combining taxis and subways, took 44 minutes and cost 35 cents. It was the only bargain I came across in the next 14 hours. The following day was spent listening to more lectures, seeing instructional films, which was fine because I caught up on my sleep, learned how to climb down the side of a sinking ship, what to do until the rescue crafts arrive. Yes, Lieutenant, they always come. What to expect of life on a troop ship, damn little, and how to contact the post chaplain, and finally an impassioned plea for us to increase our war bond allotments. Then they turned us out to graze for the second night, and I didn't waste that one either. We heard the news at the morning formation. The following shipments are alerted as of now, blah, 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 IJ 900 HP, blah, blah, blah. Our colonel took the group aside. Gentlemen and ladies, the war is about to take on a far more personal aspect for all of us. I am fairly certain we will not be leaving until tomorrow morning, but we are now under security orders, so the OSS and the U.S. Army would appreciate your cooperation. He paused and let this sink in, then added, or in plain English, don't go out under the fence tonight. We spent the afternoon playing softball. The base running was of the kamikaze variety, but no one achieved that which they sought, entrance to the Fort Hamilton Base Hospital for an indefinite stay. After the game, word came around we were due to embark at 6 in the morning. Upon hearing these glad tidings, most of IJ 900 HP adjoined to the officers' club and got stiff. After breakfast, we had a final baggage check, during which everyone made a determined effort to appear unconcerned. Then a half-mile march from the fort to a ferry slip, passing numerous citizens who didn't bother to cheer. We boarded an ancient bucket, churned up the river at a smart 3 knots per, disembarked at another pier, and stood waiting to climb up a gangplank which disappeared into what seemed to be the Empire State Building floating on its side. She was nothing less than the Martina converted for troop carrying. Even in her war paint, the lady was a queen. While we were waiting, a swarm of Red Cross volunteers descended on us and distributed candy bars, donuts, milk, and coffee with a lavish hand. After cramming my musette bag, I left half empty in anticipation of such a happy event. I began tossing donuts and containers of milk to a ravenous bunch of GIs standing in an open cargo door near the stern of the ship. They told me they'd gone aboard the day before to help store baggage. In return for nourishment, they gave me what bits of information they had picked up regarding the voyage. How to get billeted where there was hot, fresh water, how to get on the best meal schedule, and how to duck the exercise period. In the midst of this, there was a brief renewal of hostilities with the Transportation Corps. A first lieutenant who held down some terribly vital job in the loading detail took it upon himself to shout, "Hey you, stop throwing things to those men. If I don't, what'll you do? Have me sent overseas?" This had been the standard threat at Camp Plauche, and he reminded me of everyone I'd had trouble with down there. "I'll report you if you don't stop throwing things." My answer was promptly reported to a lieutenant colonel, who reported it to our colonel, who called for me and said sternly, "Have you any extra candy bars?" "I only have 2. 5 minutes later, we went aboard. I was handed 2 slips of paper, one telling me where I slept, the other when I ate. My meal ticket wasn't the one the boys in the cargo door had recommended, and I created a mild furor by politely asking for an exchange. When the defender of the Empire got it through his head that I couldn't have cared less about being most irregular, he made the switch. I had broken a British square. We wandered aimlessly around the lower decks, wondering why they'd bothered to print the signs in English, until a kind-hearted steward took me by the hand and led me to my quarters. They were something less than exclusive. I occupied what must have originally been an indoor rugby field with 327 other second lieutenants. My bunk was in the middle one in a tier of 3. The Medical Administration Corps was above me. The Air Corps was beneath me. We had been ordered to stay put, so I practiced Morse code on my life preserver light, still 2 words a minute tops, until the battery expired. Finally, my mess ticket number was called. I went to the dining hall and was delighted to find 400 Army nurses already seated. My friends in the cargo door had steered me right. The male officers were assigned to tables apart from the nurses, but seating tickets were being traded before the second course was served. I could only hope the luck of IJ 900 HP would hold all the way over. Our heroic little band struck pretty much together at first. Then we loosened up and made friends with a number of deserving shipmates who most of whom seemed to be attractive nurses. One named Carol had a fortunate weakness for paratroopers, her brother being one. He also must have been someone's best friend during 3.5 years in the Army. He had risen to the exalted rank of Private First Class. The presence of the OSS shipment, which included military personnel, civilians, and women, aroused considerable speculation. They asked questions we answered according to our various cover stories. The salt air and fine weather invigorated me to the point where I changed mine every 12 hours. Carol was enthralled. We sat under a lifeboat to keep from being stepped on and became great friends. The Martina was speedy enough to go across without the soul-soothing benefit of convoy protection, so we had a variety of drills each day. Lifeboat, fire, collision, enemy surface attack, enemy air attack. The only difference was that during some you went to your quarters, during others you went to your abandoned ship station. The wise boys soon learned to go to the lavatories and keep the card games intact through all kinds. I browsed around and discovered that a white handkerchief tied around the right arm gave the wearer complete freedom of movement during all drills. This came in handy, especially during anti-aircraft firing practice. The British manned the port batteries. An American ACAC unit, which was making the trip, kept its hand in by borrowing the starboard guns. Competition impressed me as being on a rather low level. Each side fired twice a day for 5 days, and neither hit a thing. I stood around with my white armband and listened to the crew of the Martina blister her paint with their comments. Take my word for it, Alcock. We'll bloody well get knocked for 6 if we were ever attacked by anything more than flying fish. Life became dull when the sun went down. Strict blackout rules went into effect and no one was allowed on deck. The officers' lounge was the next best thing to the last scrimmage before the big game. Officers and nurses who wanted to be alone didn't have a prayer. All possible spots were carefully guarded by enlisted men, detailed to do just that. There were pictures of frustration, men who had sworn that since Army caste regulations prevented them from competing for any love and delight which might be around, the officers damn well weren't going to have any either. The efforts of the guards were aided and abetted by the senior officers aboard, male and female. I had done battle with she-dragons protecting their young in my day, but for pure dedication to duty, I had never encountered the likes of ranking officers in the Army Nurse Corps. 5 days after we left New York, 2 Air Corps pilots put their 20/20 vision to work from opposite sides of the ship and howled land. We were in the Irish Sea. Carol came running over and proudly announced, "I've just seen Ireland." "What are you looking at?" "Wales, I think." "Oh, where? I've never seen one." Our port of destination proved to be Liverpool. After a few hours spent running around innocent tugs in their harbor, the Martina slipped a quarter of a mile of pilings and tied up alongside a dock. The OSS shipment was not scheduled to leave until the following morning. I thought they might try to sneak us off in the dead of night, but the only person who left that way was one of our corporals. He was given permission to take a stroll on deck after blackout, and promptly managed to wander overboard. Fortunately, he landed in the harbor and was fished out almost at once. If he had fallen from the deck to the dock, we'd have been -1 in the morning. A report. He walked off a high-riding lady. The luck of IJ 900 HP did hold right until the end. Someone was considerate enough to leave Carol's detachment on board until the next morning too. So our 2 groups got together for a farewell ball. Whatever else that hospital unit expected to run into, they were certainly ready to handle snakes. Next morning, leaned on the rail and waved to Carol as she marched down the gangplank and away to war. Then our colonel called us to the lounge. He'd received instructions to take us down to London, where we'd be parceled out to the various branches. After a fond farewell to the Martina, the OSS contingent swung jauntily down the planks to the strains of Onward Christian Soldiers, played by a Salvation Army band. This occasioned comment among the dockside watchers, who arrived at the logical conclusion that we were a detachment of chaplains.